Who was the most feared ruler in all of China's long, turbulent history? A man so powerful that 2,000 years after his death, his tomb still lies sealed, untouched, unbroken, because scientists fear what might happen if they disturb it. And this isn't some folklore passed down to frighten children. This is the real-life story of China's first emperor, a ruler whose grip on power was so absolute that even death hasn't managed to loosen it. Our story begins in 259 BC. The rise of the king. A boy named Qin Shi Huang was born into the western state of Qin. Back then, China wasn't a single nation. It was a violent chessboard of rival kingdoms, each with its own laws, currency, dialect, and ambition. When Qin Shi Huang was just 13, his father died, and he ascended the Qin throne. Imagine a boy still learning the politics of adulthood, suddenly wearing the crown of a kingdom. Most rulers in that position would be content to survive. But Qin Shi Huang's mind worked differently. He didn't want to rule a kingdom. He wanted to rule the kingdom. All of it. Every inch of land between the mountains in the west and the sea in the east. What followed was over a decade of relentless campaigns, diplomatic trickery, and the kind of calculated ruthlessness that left enemies with no illusions about his resolve. The rival kingdoms, Han, Zhao, Yan, Wei, Chu, and finally Qi, fell one by one. By 221 BC, the dream had become reality. For the first time in history, China stood united under one ruler. Qin Shi Huang declared himself Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of Qin. And he wasn't just a conqueror. He was a system builder. He standardized currency, weights, measures, and even the width of cart axles so that the wheels of trade could literally run smoothly across his vast new empire. He connected and expanded fortifications into what would become the Great Wall. Some saw him as a tyrant, others as the architect of stability. The truth? He was both. Death of the king. For all his reforms and conquests, Qin Shi Huang faced one problem he couldn't conquer: death. And here's where it gets strangely relatable. These days, people drink green smoothies and detox teas to cleanse their bodies. The emperor? He was doing the same thing, just with mercury. Yes, mercury is the same liquid metal you were warned never to touch in school science class. To him, it wasn't poison. It was an elixir. Court alchemists promised it could fortify his body, ward off illness, and even make him immortal. And the emperor didn't just sip, he made it part of his daily regimen. He also sent expeditions across seas and mountains, searching for mythical islands said to hold the secret to eternal life. None returned with what he wanted. In the end, the cure became the cause. In 210 BC, during a grand tour of his empire, the emperor's health collapsed, likely due to mercury poisoning. He was only 49. His death was kept secret for weeks. Years before his death, he had commanded the construction of an afterlife so grand it would rival the world of the living. At the foot of Mount Li, near Xi'an, work began on a mausoleum complex that would mirror his capital city. Over 700,000 laborers, soldiers, craftsmen, and convicts spent nearly 40 years building it. The scale is staggering. Almost 38 square miles of walls, gates, palaces, and underground chambers. Inside the inner city walls lay the central tomb and imperial quarters. Beyond them stretched the outer city, complete with ceremonial halls, stables, kitchens, gardens, and storehouses. And then there were the details: bronze cranes and ducks set beside artificial streams, clay musicians frozen mid-performance, dancers caught in permanent motion to entertain the emperor's spirit. Even the plumbing was elaborate, with drainage systems designed to protect the inner chambers from flooding. But his most famous creation was an army. In 1974, farmers digging a well hit clay, not pottery shards, life-sized statues. Soon, archaeologists uncovered an entire army buried in battle formation. Over 8,000 warriors, each with distinct facial features, hairstyles, and armor. Generals stood stern-faced beside archers and cavalrymen. Acrobats, officials, stable hands, every role in court life was represented. Together, They formed a frozen empire meant to follow Qin Shi Huang into eternity. Initially, these figures blazed with color, but the pigments disintegrated almost instantly when exposed to air during excavation, a painful reminder of how easily the past can vanish when disturbed. Which is why the most dangerous part of the complex has never been touched. The heart of darkness. Beneath a pyramid-shaped mound lies the emperor's actual burial chamber. No modern human has entered it. We rely on the writings of Sima Qian, a historian who lived a century after the emperor's death, for descriptions, and they read like something out of an epic. Inside, he claimed, were palaces and towers, rare treasures and artifacts. The floor was a map of China, with rivers and seas crafted from flowing liquid mercury. These weren't symbolic puddles. The mercury was set to flow mechanically, creating an eternal, shimmering network of waterways. Above, the ceiling was painted with constellations, a universe for the emperor to gaze upon. And guarding it all? Booby traps. Crossbows were rigged to fire the moment an intruder crossed the threshold. For centuries, scholars debated whether this was fact or fancy. For over 2,000 years, the tomb of Qin Shi Huang has remained sealed, and it's not because archaeologists have lost interest. The truth is, the risks of opening it are as real as the treasures it might hold. The first and most invisible danger is mercury. Ancient historian Sima Qian wrote that the emperor ordered vast rivers and seas of liquid mercury to be poured into the tomb, laid out to mirror China's waterways. For centuries, many assumed this was poetic exaggeration, until modern surveys detected mercury levels in the surrounding soil up to 100 times higher than usual. That's not a trace. That's a reservoir. Mercury vapor is deadly, even in small amounts. Inhaling it can damage the nervous system, impair memory, cause hallucinations, and, at higher exposure, kill. Inside a sealed chamber, the concentration could be far greater than anything safe for humans. One wrong step could turn the air itself into a weapon. Then, there are the defenses we can see, at least in theory. Sima Qian also described mechanical crossbows rigged to fire automatically at anyone who entered. While wood might have rotted over the centuries, the metal components could still survive. We know this because the bronze weapons found with the Terracotta army are still sharp today, preserved by an ancient anti-rust technique using chromium centuries before the metal was discovered in the West. The moment that seal is broken, the process of decay would begin, and much of it could vanish before it could be recorded. For now, the tomb is explored only through non-invasive methods such as ground-penetrating radar, magnetic surveys, and chemical analysis. They've revealed a maze of chambers, corridors, and possible hidden rooms, but what lies inside remains unknown. Some warn that waiting risks damage from earthquakes, groundwater, or pollution. Others argue that opening it too soon could destroy irreplaceable history in a single day. And so it remains closed, not because we can't open it, but because once we do, we can never close it again. Whether by design or by fate, Qin Shi Huang's strategy worked. His tomb isn't just a burial place, a fortress, a puzzle, and a warning. It has stood untouched for over 2 millennia, daring anyone to test its defenses. And maybe that's exactly what the emperor wanted to be remembered, not just as the man who unified China, but as the ruler whose will extended beyond death itself. Beneath the green slopes of Mount Li, the first emperor lies in his underground palace, surrounded by an army that will never tire, rivers of mercury that never dry, and traps that may still be waiting. Someday, science may break his seal. Until then, the tomb remains what it has always been, a silent challenge from a man who feared nothing but death, and maybe, just maybe, conquered even that.